Here's the thing. Going forward, I'm switching things up a bit. It's been my ambition lately to give you more per video, so I'm excited to publish longer videos with multiple reviews. Still, of course, accompanied by whiskeys I'm excited to share. I'm also officially introducing you to my personal rating system. This is just the way that I tend to rate movies, and it goes like this. I've identified 5 aspects of a film that matter to me: acting and casting, visual effects and editing, story and message, entertainment value, music score and soundtrack, and an additional category for personal preference. Because that arbitrary sense of whether or not I enjoyed a movie is worth considering too. For each of these categories, I will assign a value of 0, 1, or 2. The sum total of these values lands the final rating of the film on this scale. For each film in this video, I'll discuss my thoughts on each category and assign the 0, 1, or 2 rating. And at the end of each review, we'll see where my final score of the film lands, and you will have had every step of my thought process along the way there. I picked this whiskey up at the store when I happened to have found it on sale, and so with a new format for Real Buzzed, it seemed to be a great opportunity to try a new bottle of whiskey, and I'm looking forward to telling you more about it here in a bit. Today, I'm sipping on Bulleit Single Barrel and reviewing the films Queer, Flow, and Gladiator II. Cheers. So, a lot of you know the film Challengers, which came out earlier this year starring Josh O'Connor, Mike Faist, and Zendaya in a steamy 3-way battle for love. Well, that director, Luca Guadagnino, has another film on the way. And if you found the passion and desire in Challengers alluring, then there's a good chance you're going to be enticed by this one too. This is my review for Queer. Starring Daniel Craig and Drew Starkey, Queer follows William Lee, an American expat in Mexico City who spends his days almost entirely alone, except for a few contacts with other members of the small American community. His encounter with Eugene Allerton, an expat former soldier who's new to the city, shows him for the first time that it might be finally possible to establish an intimate connection with somebody. If you were following this film when it premiered at the Venice Film Festival, you know how festival audiences raved about Daniel Craig's performance as William, calling it a career-defining role for him. Well, I too am applauding his performance in this film. He's flamboyant and verbose, but not excessively so. And he's exceptional at managing a delicate balance between being social and outgoing with also being insecure and awkward. It's a refreshingly nuanced performance from Craig, but the caveat I have is that while Craig is good, I think his performance is elevated by the counterbalance of his co-star, Drew Starkey, playing Eugene. The boy at the center of William's attention, Eugene is in so many ways the opposite of William. Young, lean, masculine, and often enigmatic, he's a hard character to read, leaving William and the audience alike constantly guessing what his desires are. And that demands an equal amount of nuance on the part of Starkey that he absolutely nails. When he and Craig are on screen together, or even in the same scene as each other, the tension is palpable, taking their will they, won't they dynamic to captivating levels. Casting in the film is spot on, so this category gets a 2. The film is broken up into 3 chapters and an epilogue, each covering a different segment of our protagonist's journey, and there's a lot to take away from the adventure. But it's the deep-rooted themes about desire and longing and interest and interconnectedness that really struck me, because they are so excellently baked into this story. Especially in the first chapter of the film where William is pursuing Eugene, and when they finally do connect, it's not just a sex scene, it's pure cinema. In the end, it's a story that challenged me and really made me think a lot about it, and I like when a story gives me things to ponder and think about when the film's over. So, story, message, and themes gets a 2. Queer takes some big risks in the editing department. The final chapter in particular offers some experimental sequences that completely shake up the tone of the film. I personally dug these editing and visual effects choices, especially that trippy transition into the epilogue. Also, it's common knowledge that Queer was meant to be a much longer film at first. Reports say the film was originally submitted as a nearly 3.5-hour movie. What we have here is a 2-hour and 15-minute excursion, and I personally think it's pretty apparent where cuts may have been made in this story. The movie leans heavily into Chapter 1. Almost half of the runtime is spent in this chapter world building this community that William is a part of, leaving parts 2, 3, and the epilogue to share the last half of the film. Again, these choices didn't bother me too much. It might be off-putting to some, but for visual effects and editing, I give it a 2. Different people will take different things away from Queer, and your independent experience is going to determine how invested you are throughout the course of the movie. I found it riveting to hang on the fragility of William and Eugene's interactions. When the movie transitions out of the city and into the adventure, I was fascinated in where this story was going to go. And when the movie reaches its intended destination, I was utterly mesmerized by the visual representation of what they had discovered. So for me, this movie flew by and kept me thoroughly entertained from start to finish. And for that, entertainment value gets a 2. Accompanying the great performances, the striking visuals, and the entrancing story is an equally fantastic score. I do remember some of the more noteworthy scenes having a serene and tender atmosphere that really anchored what's happening on screen. And honestly, when the score blends that naturally into a movie, it usually means that the score did its job well, and that is certainly the case here. Music score and soundtrack, a 2. I cannot wait to revisit this soundtrack. This is a movie that I think will only get better and better after multiple watches. At this point, I've only had the opportunity to have seen it the one time at TIFF. But in the months since then, the more I think about it, the better it ages in my mind, and I cannot wait to revisit it again. And whether it's your kind of film or not, I highly recommend experiencing this trip for yourself. Personal preference? This movie gets a 2. Most people won't consider Queer a perfect film, but the way I cannot wait to revisit it puts me at peace with this score. Yeah, I'm giving Queer a 12 out of 12 ForReel score, 5 out of 5 stars. So yes, Queer was a highlight of my fall film festival experience. But other highlights, surprisingly enough, included animated films. I already shared a Real Buzzed episode about the utterly heartwarming animated film, The Wild Robot, but there is one other I saw that I have to review and put on your radar. This is my review for Flow. A wondrous journey through realms, natural and mystical, Flow follows a courageous cat after his home is devastated by a great flood. Teaming up with a capybara, a lemur, a bird, and a dog to navigate a boat in search of dry land, they must rely on trust, courage, and wits to survive the perils of a newly aquatic planet. This is an animated film, of course, so there's no acting. Moreover, it's an animated film with no dialogue, so there's not even voice acting to be judged here. Without any dialogue, the film has to rely heavily on its other components. You know how they say when you lose one sense, it heightens the rest of them? That is exactly what happens here in Flow. Automatic 2 for acting and casting, nothing to report on here. But visual effects and editing, my goodness y'all, this movie is gorgeous. It's funny because the animation might look rudimentary at first, but it's a stylistic choice that 100% works for the story being told here, and it's wonderful to experience. Between the animation style and how the movie is filmed, it totally feels like you're making your way through some video game. Incredible intentionality, sleek style, and extreme attention to detail, plus a stressful one-take sequence early in the film. If you know me, you know how much I love my one-take sequences. All helps contribute to me ranking visual effects and editing a 2. You might be surprised just how entertaining this collection of creatures can be without even talking. This is a movie that knows how to hold your attention by generating believable stakes and pacing the events and dramatic elements perfectly. It's also a surprisingly funny film. The animals do what we know animals do, and taking those actions and placing them in this context just makes them even more amusing than normal. Excellent execution of thrills and drama while also remaining a tender viewing experience. Entertainment value gets a 2. And of course, no talking means the film has to rely heavily on a strong score, and this score does not disappoint. The music doubles down on the fantastical nature of the movie while carrying the ability to be bombastic and dramatic in the more actiony sequences, but also heartwarming and tender in the quieter, more intimate segments. excellent work on a dynamic score to compensate for the absence of dialogue. Music and soundtrack easily gets a 2. If there's anything I would criticize about Flow, it's probably the story, which in a way is a blessing and a curse for this project. You see, when you commit to making a film without talking, it is very hard to do so with a complex or convoluted story, and Flow is about as simple of a narrative as you can get. That means Flow is very easy to watch and quick to understand. However, by the end, what you realize is it's pretty much a silent, small-scale Noah's Ark story with some magical elements. I think I personally wish this mystical element that the film ventures to offered more of a tie into the lives and the existence of these animals, or perhaps did a better job explaining the flood or something like that. There's just a lot left up to interpretation, so the story and message gets a 1. But that by no means devalues this film beyond one's capacity to watch and enjoy it, and likely watch repeatedly and still enjoy repeatedly. It has a lot of great moments, it's beautiful to look at, and you can't not fall in love with these animals and their camaraderie. Flow is just a slice of life story about animals that band together to survive an unexpected situation. It's well executed and I highly recommend it. So, Flow gets an 11 out of 12 ForReel score, 4.5 out of 5 stars. All right, let me just take a moment to talk about this whiskey here that I have been sipping on for this video. Like I mentioned, I saw this at the store, it was on sale, and I snagged it for a really good price. And honestly, it is a really good whiskey to sip on. When I first opened the bottle, I got so much vanilla and caramel aroma from just opening the bottle. I knew I was in for a great sipping experience. It's a little strong, has a bit of a bite to it when you take a sip, but all of that sweetness that I smelled in the aroma is definitely there in the flavor. It has a bold flavor with this spice, vanilla, caramel combination that is exactly what I want out of a bourbon. And interestingly enough, even after I finish it, there's this lingering flavor of like banana that hangs around. It is particularly delicious. It has really awesome sweet notes to it. And besides the harshness, is certainly something that I would very much enjoy drinking on a regular basis. Now for the final film review of this video, and I'm confident a lot of you are looking forward to this one. This is my review for Gladiator II. Years after witnessing the death of Maximus at the hand of his uncle, Lucius, played by Paul Mescal, must enter the Colosseum after the powerful emperors of Rome conquer his home. With rage in his heart and the future of the empire at stake, he looks to the past to find the strength and honor needed to return the glory of Rome to its people. I'm going to do everyone a favor here and start with the thing I liked the least about the movie. The thing that honestly ruined the entire experience for me. And that thing is the entirely uninspired story this movie is built around. Practically plagiarizing his own work, Ridley Scott presents a sequel that rehashes too much of the original Gladiator. Lucius, the hero of Gladiator II, treads the identical path as Maximus in the first film, going from warrior leader to prisoner of war to overqualified combat entertainment to Colosseum fan favorite. There is nothing here that Russell Crowe didn't already do. An interesting addition to the story, though, is Denzel Washington's character, with a very devious and sinister role in the story that I honestly thought should have just been the whole film, without all these half-baked measures to tie this into the Maximus story of the original movie. Other than that, fresh or creative storytelling is clearly a low priority here in Gladiator II. And what's worse is anyone who deeply cherishes the original Gladiator will likely weep at how dirty this sequel does that film's ending, with the opening prologue of Gladiator II pretty much serving as a Control-Z on the goals Maximus died trying to achieve. And the nullifying of Gladiator should be a crime punishable by a barrage of negative criticism. For all of that, Gladiator gets a hard 0 in the story category, and I wish I could give negative points here, I really do. See, I had to get that out of my system because if you're not like me and you just want an overall enjoyable experience, Gladiator 2 does offer something of value to that particular audience. Part of that promise for theatrical entertainment is a top-notch cast who definitely showed up to put in the work. The drama is fueled by a pair of unhinged twin emperors played by Joseph Quinn and Fred Hetchinger, who we saw earlier this year as a sweet and gentle grandson in the comedy film Thelma, now playing a batshit crazy ruler of Rome. Talk about range. And while the headliners Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal do their part to try to keep the film interesting, I would call Denzel Washington the one who stole the show here, as his character embarked on a rampage of political and psychological warfare in the third act of the film. Unfortunately, the problem with acting and casting is they have very weak material to work with. Washington's greatest moments don't happen until towards the end of the movie. Pascal doesn't get enough screen time to really have any standout moments, and too often is Mescal positioned as a knockoff Aragorn. I'm sorry the cast wasn't given better opportunities with a better script. Acting and casting gets a 1. The visual effects and editing in the film, however, is quite impressive. The first Gladiator had tigers in the final fight, but Gladiator II takes full advantage of technology to add rabid animals into most arena combats. And while there was potential to overdo CGI work, I think Gladiator II found a healthy balance for special effects and practical effects. Visual effects and editing, give it a 2. And to that point, those who came for an epic experience will get that and likely derive a lot of entertainment value from this film. Gladiator II absolutely comes with that big, grand presence you would expect from a blockbuster film. And with the elaborate set designs, intense action sequences, and commitment to a theatrically worthy experience, Gladiator II certainly delivers on all of those fronts. Entertainment value also gets a 2. But another weak point of the film, especially in comparison to the original Gladiator film, is the score. It's just kind of there. It's not distractingly bad, but it certainly isn't Hans Zimmer good. It lacks a rousing nature to it that should come with a hero's journey. It's so easy to get me emotionally invested into a film when the music knows how to pull the right strings, so to speak. Middle of the road here, music and soundtrack gets a 1. For reasons I mentioned with the story, this movie just did not have a lot of staying power with me personally. With a fascinating story from a supporting character and a self-plagiarized narrative at the forefront of the film, I was far too distracted by weak story and character development to enjoy the spectacle. Personal preference gets a 0. As you can tell, I personally didn't like Gladiator II and will likely not be watching it again. I'd much rather just go rewatch the original Gladiator and pretend like this one just doesn't exist. But I have to reconcile the fact that there are good elements to it and recognize that the assignment here wasn't to make a better Gladiator movie, but just to entertain the people. So go ahead and shout at me. Are you not entertained? No, I'm not. But some people will be, and for that, Gladiator II lands at a 6 out of 12 for real score, 2.5 out of 5 stars. Thank you for tuning in. Head over to thisisforreal.com to see more content from me and my awesome team of writers. This is Real Buzzed. Be wise, drink responsibly, and if you like this video and you want to see more, hit like and subscribe. I put ice in this, by the way, so